Alright, good evening folks, it's Enforcer Matt, and today we have very big news developing across Russia, Crimea, and Iran, so let's jump right into it. This morning, Crimea has now declared widespread water shortages as they no longer have the ability to run the pumps to feed the water to local towns and villages, and Russian authorities are trying to maintain order, but people have understandably begun to panic. Meanwhile, Ukraine struck and destroyed a large part of Crimea's Sevastopol power plant, which supplies about 50% of the electricity to the entire peninsula, as it seems that quick repairs are very unlikely, and meanwhile, Russian authorities have announced that mobile phone service is now being rationed in some cities in Crimea, further fueling fears that Putin may decide to turn off the internet to censor any growing civil unrest. And meanwhile, in Iran, we have now seen a new series of major strikes on Iran's coast, as U.S. officials finalize plans to hit strategic targets far wider in scope than merely the Iranian coast. So right now we have a lot of news from around the world, but especially we have some very devastating news, like I mentioned, coming out of Crimea, and that disaster is starting to get way worse as of this morning. So let's jump right into our first article, which goes to none other than Preston Stewart. And right here is the dreaded announcement that a lot of people in Crimea have been not wanting to see so far, but we just got this morning that apparently a major part of Crimea will be without water completely today. And remember, this is coming from a Russian source, so they're trying to make it sound as minimal as possible, and they're saying today only, but I think this is going to be a much wider of a problem because it's not just for today. In my opinion, this is about to be a very permanent fixture inside of Crimea, and the water shortages are going to become very widespread and literally constant, I would say very, very soon. And we can see some more details right here in the article. It says the water supply will be partially suspended in Kerch, Armatsk, Saki, Theodosia, as well as a number of villages and districts of the peninsula, according to local media, citing the press service and apparently within Crimea itself. So there's also apparently a lot more areas that's not being listed here in this post that are also experiencing water shortages, and I would expect this is probably worse than they're even saying. If the Russians are announcing this, that means it's probably been going on for a minute, and it's getting so bad that they can't even try to hide it anymore. So once you start losing the ability to have fresh water for the people and clean drinking water, I would say at that point the civil infrastructure has largely collapsed inside the Crimean Peninsula, and that's where we're at currently as of today. And this is a very major crisis step right here that we were waiting to see was going to happen, and today is that day. So it's getting very serious to say the least. And just to explain real quick why this is probably happening is we are expecting that the water pumps inside of Crimea that's operated by the Russian authorities simply cannot run because the electricity is being cut off inside of Crimea, and we'll get to that in just a second. A major power plant in Sevastopol was cut off that supplies 50% of the power to the entire peninsula. That's one of the main reasons that we believe the water pumps aren't working, but also they're out of fuel too. So the backup diesel generators that run the water pumps, they don't have any diesel to actually run the pumps either. So they don't have any way to power their pumps, and that's why they don't have water going to the towns and villages. Then that's the current best guess we're expecting right now as to why this is taking place. So moving into our next post here, speaking of the power outages, this one goes to Max 26. And right here we can see exactly why Crimea is having such a bad problem with their power situation and also their water situation, because we can see that at the Baltic thermal power plant, which is also known to some people as the Sevastopol power plant, is currently burning and on fire after Ukraine hit the hell out of this thing apparently yesterday. And we did cover this a little bit on the stream last night, but we have some more detail and footage today showing just how bad this is, and I also have some stats for you that's going to show you how devastating this is going to be for the Crimean Peninsula over several months into the future. So let's take a look at the damage footage first of the power plant so you can get an idea of just how bad this is. Let's take a look. So there you have it, the Sevastopol power plant burning like crazy, as you can see right there. I mean, look at that. Fires all over. Look at that, secondary explosions. I mean, this place is in very, very foul shape to say the least. So this right here is a major power plant, and I'll explain just how major it is here in just a second. But as you can see though, the damage was very severe, and Ukraine did a number on this entire power facility. So it's not going to be in good shape anytime soon. I doubt the Russians are going to be able to repair that. And right now we're hearing that apparently very critical spots were hit on the power plant, and it could take months to fix all this damage that's been caused right here. So moving into our next post here, this one's going to go to War Translated. And we see here that apparently this power plant right here that we just saw burning supplies nearly 50% of the electrical generation for the entire occupied Crimean Peninsula. So that is insane how much power that facility right here supplied. And that's going to be literally turning off the water supply and also causing all kinds of other havoc across the entire area. And taking a quick look here at the announcement that the Ukrainian Special Forces put out, you can see they say the Balaclava thermal power plant is the energy backbone of the peninsula, and together with the Tavria thermal power plant in Sevastopol, the plant provides approximately 90% of Crimea's energy consumption, and these two are key pillars of the region's own electrical generation. So also, by the way, you might realize there's a hint right there in the middle of it. The Tavria thermal power plant is probably the next target. I can't recall if it's been hit already or before at all. I can't recall that right off the top of my head. I don't think it has, but I think that's also hinting that Ukraine's going to probably be going for that one too, because between the two, that's 90% of Crimea's power between those two plants. And today, Balaclava was taken out, or actually last night it was, and now we're seeing that the water shortage is starting to take place. So I would say, to me, it seems like Crimea is in a state of crisis that we haven't seen quite before, in my personal opinion. But moving into our next one here, it gets even worse in our next post here for More Translated. Because now we've heard that the mobile service for cell phones is also now being rationed by schedule, apparently in Dzhankoy. So this is the announcement right here put out by Russian authorities. They said, "Dear residents and guests of the city, according to information from the Ministry of Internal Policy of the Republic of Crimea, reliable mobile phone service in the Dzhankoy area is available only between like 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. And nobody's really sure why that is. It could be that maybe because the electricity's out, maybe they can't operate the cell phone towers and they're relying on diesel generators. That could be it. But many people are also speculating that maybe this is a test that the Russian government might be conducting to see how well the Crimean public takes the idea that maybe the mobile internet might just get shut off completely, so that way they can try to tamp down on civil unrest within the peninsula itself. Nobody's really sure why this is happening, and so right now there's a lot of guesswork involved in it, and you might notice the Russians didn't explain either why this mobile phone rationing is currently taking place either. So quite concerning, I would say. And I would say that the odds of Putin turning the internet off in Crimea is starting to skyrocket as the people start to cry out for help from the peninsula. And you might be wondering, what is Russia doing to try to help out the people within Crimea? And we're seeing what they're not doing in our next post right here. And this one goes to Tendar, because we've seen that the absolute siege on Russian ships near the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea that are trying to go and dock at Crimean ports to bring in diesel, gasoline, and other goods. Ukraine has continued that siege, and they struck 20 Russian ships in the Azov last night, 17 oil tankers, and 2 natural gas transports, and also a tugboat. So this is what we heard this morning of what they've hit. We have seen here a couple of different videos of it. I won't show the video of the ships getting hit, by the way, because it's pretty redundant at this point. We've seen a ton of that. As you might notice, it says number 118 up here in the top left corner. So this is not the first time they've hit a ship. It's the 118th time they've done it. Here's number 122 right here that you can see getting hit. So Ukraine's conducting a literal naval blockade without a navy, using these aerial drones nonstop. And if you're wondering about the official number, it's now up to 136 plus Russian ships struck in just 9 days alone. That's 9 days, 136 ships disabled. And I can't even really put that into words how unfathomable that is, that Ukraine can conduct something like that, even without a navy, across the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea. That's truly remarkable and a brand new form of warfare that nobody's really ever seen before. But moving into our next one here, this one also goes to War Translated. We've also seen that in mainland Russia, and moving outside the Crimea news for a second, it's not going any better there. In Kazan, we've now seen that the lines for gas were so long that a Russian man got out of his car with binoculars that you use for hunting, literally just to spot the end of the line so far down the way, miles down the street, that he literally used binoculars for it. So let's take a look. And right here, you can see this is a Russian in the gas line right here filming. And right there is a dude using binoculars literally to see the end of the gas line. So far away, you can't see it with the naked eye. So there he is getting back into the car. He looks deflated. It must have been extremely long because he must have realized it was not going anywhere. So this has become a staple inside of Russia. Now the Russian government's telling people that they can't even queue up for gas. And now it's becoming illegal to even queue up for gas. And they're saying that's a traffic violation. But, since when does Russia care about traffic violations? They literally speed through the streets every single day with a Kremlin motorcade like it's a reckless parade. So, this is pretty silly right here, but the gas lines are getting worse inside of mainland Russia. Meanwhile, the desperation to fix it is even getting worse as well. We're now seeing that a new blessing is being given to the cars waiting in the gas lines. We had seen before that apparently some Russian priests were blessing the gas pumps themselves. Now we're seeing that they started blessing the cars, because apparently blessing the gas pumps didn't work, so maybe blessing the cars will work too. We did see this right here, that apparently they were flinging some of the water onto the cars, and they were saying that maybe maybe the line starts moving immediately now that the cars are blessed with the water, but I don't think that's going to work either. I really doubt it. I would say definitely not working. But just taking a quick look here at the video, here they are throwing the water onto the car, as you can see right here. Let me go ahead and mute that, by the way. There they are flinging the water onto it, and they're apparently going around blessing a lot of cars in the lines here, and they're moving around, I guess, on a golf cart, the priest is or something. So, you know, it's that type of stuff right there. The Russian government's hoping that maybe that calms people down or something. I don't really know, but that's the desperation right there. But moving into our next one, this one's going to go to Jay in Kyiv. We're also seeing that the Russian government's now opening anti-monopoly cases on companies within Russia. In the midst of them going financially bankrupt, they're now worried about a monopoly forming inside of Russia, which is quite interesting timing with that, by the way, because as Jay in Kyiv notes right here in his post, now they're moving on to looting the top guys, the top oligarchs and major companies inside of Russia. And after decades of loyal service, it seems like no oligarch is safe, and they're all on the chopping block. So I won't go into too many details about the exact company and stuff, but the Russian government's alleging that one of the companies, one of the big ones inside of Russia, is publicly traded on the Russian stock market. They're accusing that company of forming a monopoly or not pricing their stuff fairly. And that's very strange time to do that, like I said, because right now Russia's going broke, the companies are going broke, and now's not the time to open up an anti-monopoly case. So you might notice it's a very, very odd to do that in the midst of the crisis. And that's because I think that there's a ulterior motive behind it, in my personal opinion. But that's up to you to decide. I would say it looks to me like Putin is trying to go for the companies. But moving into our next one here, this one's also going to go to Nexta. We've also seen that Belarus has tried to pull off another bad maneuver, and it looks like Russia is now using the relay stations yet again in Belarus to control their Shahed drone attacks going inside of Ukraine, and the assessment's been made by some of the Ukrainian defense minister officials following a drone strike on a gas station today inside of Ukraine, and they said that it appears to be that Russia is still using those relay stations, and whether or not Lukashenko can resist the persistent request to deploy relay stations, Ukraine's not really sure. They also can't rule out that they may have been installed without Belarusian knowledge, and they're really not sure about the details of those. So, you know, before we had heard that Ukraine was threatening to attack Belarus on the border to get rid of those relay stations, I'm not sure if that threat is still on the table, but now that we're hearing that Belarus has not truly shut off the relay stations, I think it's reasonable to assume that that threat could be back on the table again, and Ukraine could attack Belarus to get rid of those relays. That's my best guess. But the fact that Belarus is letting those still be used, that's playing a very dangerous game and possibly dragging Belarus into the conflict very soon. So that situation is back on the table yet again, and that was also kind of expected. We weren't really sure if Lukashenko could withstand the request of Vladimir Putin because he's largely Putin's puppet to a large degree, so it doesn't look like he's resisting it very well. But moving on to our next post here, this one's going to go to Military News Ukraine, and in addition to Russia conducting live fire exercises on a NATO lake yesterday, literally on the border of the Baltic states, we're now hearing that more warnings are coming out of the Baltic states about possible Russian provocations. We're now hearing that Lithuania has received intelligence indicating that Russia is preparing provocations and targeted kinetic attacks on critical infrastructure in the Baltic states to test NATO unity. And that's not the first time we've heard that, by the way. We've heard Poland say that, we've heard several Baltic states say that, and now we're hearing Lithuania repeat it yet again. So they are literally making these warnings nonstop. I mean, at this point, they really can't be ignored because they're literally shouting from the rooftops almost on a weekly basis about how Russia's about to attack the Baltics. And we've been predicting that Russia might do that imminently, and it sounds to me like the Baltics themselves are very concerned about that as well. So we could see some kind of kinetic action being taken place on the Baltics. I would say that's much more probable than Russia attacking Poland. I would say the Baltics are low-hanging fruit, unfortunately, and I think Russia might go for it. But moving into our next one here, this one's going to go to Shin, and we've also got some big news out of Iran. So let's jump away from the Ukraine Crimea news for a second, and let's jump into our major Iran news, because today we're seeing some huge developments, I would say. Because we have seen that U.S. forces have struck Iranian military targets in Bandar Abbas, Khormuz, Avaz, Kashem, Tumb, Bashir, and also Ku Istak on July the 14th, which was just last night, and CENTCOM confirmed that this morning. Also, CENTCOM is refuting the Iranian claim that a civilian facility was struck in Hovasaya. They're refuting that claim. So the Iranians were saying that there was some grain storage that was struck, and CENTCOM saying that is simply not the case. So it's up to you about who you believe or not. Usually we believe CENTCOM, but sometimes CENTCOM gets a little carried away, so it's kind of hard to tell. But moving into our next one here, this one's also going to go to open source intel, and we've gotten some footage of the Chabahar port getting hit yet again. We did hear about this last night, but we got our first piece of footage right here showing the marine control tower in an area right to the left of it getting hit by a major aerial strike. So let's take a look at this video. And there you can see it. This is Chabahar Port right here, and this guy's filming the port. Right there in the middle, you can see that little structure right near the smoke plume, that is the Marine Control Tower for Chabahar. And right to the left right there, we geolocated that last night. We believe that is the location storing some of the fast attack boats for the Iranian military, and that they were being dry stored right there on the dock and able to be put in the water at a moment's notice. So that's what we think was hit. We think that there was a missile strike here to take those out, and that's most likely the answer that we're seeing here. And we'd already seen the Marine Control Tower had been hit a couple of days prior to this, so it's already pretty damaged, to say the least, on the front of the tower. But moving into our next one here, this one is going to go to open source intel yet again. We've also seen more large U.S. strikes being conducted. Apparently, just about an hour or two ago, two powerful explosions were heard on Iran's Hengam Island, which is right next to Qashem Island, which is where the Iranian toll booth is held for the ships passing through. And we're seeing that there were two major explosions there. We don't know what was hit on Hengam Island yet, but it could be some possible air defense activity, maybe, or something like that. It's kind of unclear, but it was hit, and as you can see right there, there's Hengam Island right off to the left of Qashem. So that's a pretty big hit we're hearing about, and we expect to have footage by stream time tonight to see exactly what the target was on that location. But also moving into our next one, this one also goes to open source intel, and we get some more news about what could be happening with the escalations by the U.S. forces on Iran over the next week. Because we are now hearing that the U.S. president chaired a Situation Room meeting just yesterday on a massive offensive against Iran, and the discussion focused on devastating strikes on strategic targets far wider in scope than the current strikes around the Strait of Hormuz. And also, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of War, and also the Vice President was present at this meeting, which is normal, by the way. And the U.S. president saying that Iran better make a deal or they're not going to have anything left. That's allegedly what the president's saying right there. So it looks like, if you believe what they're saying, next week we should start seeing a lot of dual-use infrastructure strikes inside of Iran, but that's up for debate, because I would not be surprised, and y'all can go ahead and mark this down as my prediction, I would not be surprised if the U.S. said that Iran suddenly wants to make a sudden deal starting in a couple of days. I wouldn't be surprised about that, and I would not be surprised to hear that even later today even. Like, it's really that unpredictable with what they're going to do with this. So honestly, if the make a deal talk starts again, I'm going to be feeling like I want to rip my hair out at this point, but hopefully it doesn't start again. Hopefully the U.S. just simply finishes the job, whatever that may look like. Hopefully they just finish it, and hopefully we're not back to this roller coaster of like, oh, they want to make a deal, they're dying to make a deal, they're begging to make a deal, some say it's the best deal. Hopefully we're not back to that garbage, because Iran literally just ended the deal that was in their favor. So if we go back to that, the U.S. leadership is just straight up out of their mind if they go back to that at this point. But jumping into our next one here, this one's going to go to Shin, and we're also seeing that apparently we're expecting a large explanatory statement from the Iranian Ghalibaf apparently in the coming hours, and who knows what the hell he's going to say. It's probably more propaganda. That's usually what they come out and say. But this dude right here has always got a lot to say, so it's no telling what he's going to be talking about. He could be explaining that maybe they're going to start attacking maybe Gulf State infrastructure or something. That would be a notable announcement. Or it could be simply more statements like the Americans are evil, blah, 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 blah. It could be stuff like that. We're waiting to see, but I wouldn't get your hopes up. It's probably nothing of significance. But with that, folks, that is actually our last post of the video. So obviously today, Crimea is turning into an absolute disaster zone, and that's really turning into something today. We'll have a lot more about that on the stream tonight. Also, if you enjoyed the video, smack the like button, and if you want to support our channel, by the way, you can do so on our Patreon page, and the links are down below for Patreon, and you can go over there and support the channel. And we're largely crowdfunded by the viewers, and it's that viewer support that makes this all possible, and of course we do appreciate it very much. And also, if you're new to the channel as well, go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well. We're currently up to about 605,000 subscribers, about to go on 606, and we do appreciate all y'all subscribing as well. If you want to get these daily updates, that's the best way to get them and get notified of it, is by subscribing and hitting the bell button here on the channel. But in the meantime though, we will see you all tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern on the next Nightly War News stream, and with that, bye bye for now.